There's a voice in your head, and it's been lying to you your entire life. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, consistently in the background, telling you what you can't do, what you don't deserve, and who you're allowed to become. And the scariest part, you believe it because it sounds exactly like you. Here's what this video is going to do. It's going to show you exactly what limiting beliefs are and where they actually come from, because the answer is going to surprise you. And most importantly, how to dismantle them. Not with toxic positivity, not with a motivational quote, with a real, practical process that psychologists and neuroscientists have been studying for decades. There's also something coming up in this video that most people in this space won't say out loud. Something about why some limiting beliefs are almost impossible to remove, and what you have to do before you even try. Don't skip ahead, the order matters. Because if you try to fix a belief before you understand where it came from, you're putting a plaster over a wound that hasn't been cleaned yet. Let's start at the beginning. What a limiting belief actually is. Most people think a limiting belief is just negative self-talk, like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be rich, or I'm just not a confident person. But that's the surface level, that's the symptom, not the disease. A limiting belief isn't just a thought you have. It's a thought you've had so many times for so long that your brain has stopped questioning it. It's become a filter, a lens you see the entire world through without even realising it's there. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine you're wearing tinted glasses, not sunglasses, just a very slight tint. At first, you'd notice the colour shift, but after a while, your brain adjusts. You stop seeing the tint, you just see the world. And you have no idea that everything you're looking at is filtered. That's what a limiting belief does. It becomes invisible. It stops feeling like a belief and starts feeling like a reality. Psychologists define a limiting belief as a cognitive distortion, a mental framework that shapes perception and behaviour in ways that constrain the person holding it. The key word there is framework. It's structural. It's not just one thought. It's the architecture that hundreds of other thoughts are built on. And here's what makes it so powerful and so dangerous. Your brain doesn't like cognitive dissonance. It doesn't like holding two conflicting ideas at once. So once a belief is installed, your brain unconsciously starts filtering reality to confirm it. You notice the evidence that supports the belief, and you dismiss or minimize the evidence that contradicts it. This is called confirmation bias, and it means that once a limiting belief takes root, the world literally starts to look like proof that it's true. You believe you're not smart enough, so you remember every time you got something wrong, and forget every time you got something right. You believe relationships always end badly, so you spot the early warning signs of failure in every connection, and ignore the signs that suggest something good. The belief creates the evidence reinforces the belief, and the cycle runs on autopilot. So where does it start? Where limiting beliefs come from? This is the part most people skip, and it's the reason most people fail to actually change. You cannot uproot something if you don't know where it's planted. Limiting beliefs don't appear out of nowhere. They are installed, usually early, usually by people who didn't mean any harm at all. Think back, and this might sting a little. Think about what you heard growing up. Not the dramatic stuff, not obvious trauma, the small, everyday things. Money doesn't grow on trees. People like us don't do things like that. Don't get too big for your boots. You're too sensitive. You're not academic. That's just how you are. Tiny sentences, said once, twice, 100 times, by parents, teachers, siblings, coaches, people who loved you or at least meant well, and your child brain, which had no filter, no critical thinking, no ability to say, actually, I disagree, absorbed every single one of them as the truth. Developmental psychologists have found that children between the ages of 0 and 7 are essentially in a hypnotic state. The brain is operating primarily in theta waves, the same brainwave state adults enter in a deep meditation or hypnosis. During this period, the subconscious mind is wide open. Everything goes in unfiltered. That's both beautiful and terrifying. Beautiful because it's how children learn language, social behaviour, and emotional responses at a staggering speed. Terrifying because it means every piece of programming, good and bad, installs directly into the subconscious without any firewall. So the 7-year-old who was told she wasn't good at art didn't have the capacity to think, well, that's just one person's opinion and I'm still developing. She took it in, filed it. I'm not creative. And 30 years later, that woman avoids anything creative. She doesn't even know why, it just feels true. So here's the twist, and this is important. Limiting beliefs don't only come from negative experiences, they can come from protective ones. If you grew up in an environment where money caused stress, fighting, instability, your brain may have decided, very logically, that money is dangerous, that wanting it leads to suffering, that people with it are greedy or corrupt, and that belief protected you. It made sense in context. But now you're an adult, the context has changed, and that belief, which was once a shield, has become a cage. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a developmental biologist and author of The Biology of Belief, argues that the subconscious mind controls roughly 95% of our behaviour. Not 50, not 70, 95%. Which means the conscious mind, the part of you watching this, the part of you that wants to change, is working with just 5% of the wheel. That's why willpower alone doesn't work. That's why telling yourself to just think positive doesn't work. You can consciously want something completely different from what your subconscious believes is possible. And your subconscious will win every time. So what do you actually do about it? How to identify your limiting beliefs. You can't remove what you can't see. And the tricky thing about limiting beliefs is that they hide. They disguise themselves as personality traits, as preferences, as just the way you are. So the first step isn't removal, it's excavation. Here's how to find them. Pay attention to your resistance. Whenever you catch yourself saying, I could never do that, or that's not for me, or I'd love to, but stop. Don't let the sentence finish on autopilot. Ask yourself, is this actually true, or does it just feel true? There's a massive difference between those things. Another method is look at your patterns, not just the outcomes, but the patterns leading to them. If you keep ending up in the same situations, same type of relationships, same financial ceiling, same point of self-sabotage, there's always a belief underneath it. Behaviour is just the visible layer. Belief is the engine. Therapists often use a technique called downward arrow, where you take a surface thought and keep asking, and if that were true, what would that mean? Until you hit the core belief underneath. It's surprisingly fast. A thought like, I didn't get that promotion, becomes, I'm not good enough, becomes, I'll never be successful, becomes, people like me don't get to have those things. That last one, that's the root. Oprah Winfrey, someone who has been extremely public about her personal development journey, has spoken about how deeply she had to go to uncover her own core beliefs. Born into poverty, experienced significant trauma in childhood, she described carrying beliefs about her own unworthiness for years that operated completely beneath the surface. She has talked openly about the work it took to identify those beliefs, not just manage the anxiety they created. And she's one of the most successful humans on the planet, which tells you something important. Success doesn't automatically remove limiting beliefs. You can achieve extraordinary things and still be running on broken programming underneath. The belief and the achievement can coexist, often uncomfortably. So once you have found the belief, what then? How to actually remove them. This is where most self-help content gets it wrong. They tell you to repeat affirmations, to write, I am wealthy and successful on a piece of paper every morning until you believe it. And look, affirmations have their place. But if you're trying to use a conscious affirmation to override a deeply embedded subconscious belief, you're essentially trying to whisper over a loudspeaker. The subconscious is louder, it always wins that fight. So what actually works? Step 1. Interrupt the belief at the source, with evidence, not with hope. Your brain installed the belief because you had evidence for it. The way to loosen its grip is to build a competing evidence base, not fake positivity, actual, specific, real evidence that the belief is not objectively true. If the belief is, I'm not capable of success, you don't counter it by saying, I'm successful. You counter it by writing down specifically, in detail, every time you succeed at something, every challenge you navigated, every time you did something difficult. You are not arguing with the belief, you're introducing data that it hasn't been shown. This is called cognitive restructuring, and it's one of the core techniques in cognitive behavioural therapy. Study after study has shown it produces measurable, lasting changes in how people perceive themselves and their circumstances. It works because you're not fighting the belief emotionally, you're undermining it logically. Step 2. Find where the belief was formed and update the interpretation. This sounds more complex than it is. Remember the idea that beliefs often form in childhood, from experiences that made sense at the time. The reframe here is, what did that experience mean to a child, versus what does it actually mean to an adult looking back? The kid who was told she wasn't good at art took it as proof of a permanent identity, but an adult can look back and say, that was one person, in one moment, probably projecting their own frustrations, speaking to a child who was still learning. That's not evidence of anything permanent, that's just a bad moment. You can't change the experience, but you can change what you've decided it means, and that meaning is everything. Step 3. Use the body, not just the mind. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Limiting beliefs don't just live in your thoughts, they live in your nervous system, in your body. Research in somatic psychology, particularly the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, shows that deeply held beliefs, especially those formed from emotional charged experiences, are stored in the body as much as the mind. This is why breath work, cold exposure, physical movement, and practices like yoga or even dancing have been shown to help shift deeply ingrained patterns. You're not just thinking your way out, you're regulating your nervous system out of a state that the belief has been living in. Step 4. Repetition, but make it felt, not just thought. New beliefs aren't built in a day. You are rewiring neural pathways and neuroplasticity. The brain's ability to change requires repetition, but not mindless repetition, felt repetition. When you practice a new belief, pair it with emotion, visualize it, feel what it would feel like if it were already true. Neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza has built an entire body of research around the idea that elevated emotion combined with clear intention accelerates the rewiring process. His work is conventional in some quarters, but the underlying neuroscience that emotion enhances memory, encoding and learning is well established. The goal isn't to fake a feeling, it's to rehearse a future so vividly that the nervous system starts to treat it as familiar rather than threatening. The belief beneath all beliefs. Here's the thing most people don't get to. Underneath all the specific limiting beliefs, the ones about money, relationships, success, intelligence, worthiness, they're usually one root belief, one core conviction that's quietly funding all the others. And for most people, it's some version of this, I am not enough. Not, I don't have enough skills or I don't have enough money, just at a fundamental level that who you are, as you are, isn't quite sufficient. That you have to earn your place. That there's something about you that needs to be fixed or hidden or improved before you're allowed to have what you want. It's so common, it's almost universal. And it's so painful that most people spend their entire lives running from it rather than looking at it. But here's what's on the other side of looking at it. When you trace any limiting belief all the way back, rarely back, you almost always find a moment, a specific moment where that conclusion was drawn. Where a child's brain, doing its best to make sense of something overwhelming, made a decision about what it meant, about what they meant. And that decision has been running the show ever since. The work isn't about destroying that belief with force, it's about having compassion for the version of yourself that formed it. Because that child was doing the most logical thing possible with the information available. They were trying to survive, to belong, to make sense of the world. They just got some things wrong, as children do. Jim Carrey, one of the most unexpected voices in the personal development space, has spoken in interviews about growing up in poverty, experiencing deep family instability, and developing what he describes as a profound sense of unworthiness that lived underneath all of the comedy, all the performance, all the success. He's talked about at the moment he realised the version of himself that was trying so hard to be enough was exhausting, and that beneath all of it was something that was already whole. That's not a motivational soundbite, that's the actual destination of this work. Not, I've fixed my limiting beliefs, not, I've replaced them with better ones, but a quieter, more solid recognition that the beliefs were never facts, that you were always more than the conclusions a frightened child drew about themselves. That's the shift, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. So here's where you actually are right now. You understand what a limiting belief is. Not just a negative thought, but a structural filter that shapes what you see, what you try, and what you allow yourself to have. You know where they come from, how they hide, and why willpower and positive thinking alone can't touch them. And you have a real process, not a quick fix, a process, one that's grounded in psychology, neuroscience, and the lived experience of people who have done the work at the deepest levels. Here's the thought to leave you with. Somewhere between the ages of 0 and 7, your brain was handed a map of what the world is like, what you're capable of, and what you deserve. Nobody asked if you wanted it, nobody told you it might be wrong, you just started navigating life with it. And for years, maybe decades, you've been wondering why you keep ending up in places you didn't choose. The map was wrong, that's all, and you can draw a new one. Not all at once, not without effort, but belief by belief, experience by experience, choice by choice. You can update the map until the person navigating it barely recognises the version of themselves who started the journey. That version is available to you. It's not a fantasy, it's not reserved for people with better starts or better luck. It's just on the other side of work. And now you know where to begin. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of the mind, subscribe to my channel for more.